In 1940, the British government rationed sugar, and it stayed rationed for 13 years. Children under 2 didn't get a sugar allowance at all. Then in September 1953, rationing ended. Practically overnight, the average adult sugar intake doubled from around 40 grams to around 80 grams, and children's sweet consumption more than doubled as well. That means that for a few years in the middle of the 20th century, Britain accidentally ran its own experiment that no ethics committee would ever approve. 2 groups of babies growing up a few months apart, growing up in wildly different sugar environments. 70 years later, researchers went looking to see what happened to their brains. Welcome back, my name's Joanna, and I am a mum to 2, I am an ex-teacher, and I am a history philosophy graduate. I just like learning stuff, I like evidence, and I ultimately just want to be a better parent because social media is an absolute minefield about how you should be a parent. It can be pretty hard, so I'm trying to find the evidence and using it to be a better parent. That's the goal. If you like the idea of that, please do hit like and subscribe. I'd love to have you join our community. I was scrolling on Facebook this morning and I saw a BBC News article pop up on my feed saying limiting sugar before age 2 improves brain health, something like that. And I want to look at that today to see, is it true? What is the study saying? And is there any other evidence to support otherwise? So first thing to clear up, it isn't just one study, there are 2 published within days of each other, and they're both using the 1953 rationing cutoff, both drawing on the UK Biobank, a big British health database that follows nearly 500,000 adults a year. The first study is a study in Neurology, and it covered 64,000 people, and it found that people whose sugar was restricted before birth and through the first year of their life had a 21% lower risk of dementia. Through the first 2 years of their life, it was 23% lower risk of dementia. And when dementia did develop, it developed on average 2.5 years later. The second study is an NPJ aging, and it covered 60,000 people, 27% lower risk of dementia overall, and 46% lower risk of Alzheimer's specifically. It also found slightly lower rates of anxiety and depression, but there was no effect on Parkinson's. Both papers also looked at brain scans in a smaller subgroup. The rationed group had more grey matter and fewer of the white matter markers we associate with small blood vessel damage, and brains that looked statistically about half a year younger than their actual age. Now here's the thing that the press has got wrong. I've seen multiple outlets running things like 27% in the headlines and describing the 23% in the body of the article. And those are 2 different papers, 2 different cohorts, 2 different studies, 2 different outcomes. And if you've seen conflicted numbers this week and wondered which one was right, the answer is both of them, and also neither of them, depending on which study anyone's actually referring to. So why is the design good? Because the design is ultimately quite clever. Most nutrition research has the same fundamental problem. The people who eat less sugar are different from people who eat more sugar in about 40 other ways. Loads of confounding factors here: income, education, stress, exercise, whether they smoke, whether they vape, and you can adjust for all of it, kind of, and still not be sure whether you've actually captured what matters. The design tries to get around that. Nobody chose to be rationed. Your sugar exposure was determined by the month that you were born in, and that's much closer to a random assignment than a food diary would ever give to you. And that's not an isolated result. Researchers have been looking at the same rationing cutoff before and found lower rates of heart disease, heart failure and stroke in that rationed group. Separate studies on completely different people have linked higher sugar intake in adulthood to higher dementia risk. And while several independent lines of evidence point in the same direction, that's more convincing than just one paper alone. And in the Neurology study, the group that rationed throughout the first year, 388 people developed dementia out of over 15,000. That's 2.6%. Out of the group that rationed through the age of 2, so that's 3% of people developed dementia. And out of the group born after rationing ended, the one who had all of the sugar, and that's 2.1%. If you read those numbers on their own, the rationing group is worse. The protective findings appear once you adjust for age. The adjustment is completely legitimate. The ration groups were born 2 or 3 years earlier, and dementia risk rises steeply with every single year of age. So of course you have to account for it. But I think it's worth knowing that the result lives inside a statistical model rather than jumping out of the raw data on its own. It's how you interpret it. And this isn't a criticism of the researchers, it's just a different feeling from we counted and fewer of them got dementia dementia. Here's another few other things that are worth holding on to. Different types of fats are being used, more processed and imported foods, changing incomes, changing infant feeding. The researchers adjusted for what they could, and they couldn't fully separate sugar from everything else that changed in the post-war movement. And nobody measured what individual babies ate either. Exposure was assigned entirely by birth date. UK Biobank volunteers are healthier, wealthier and less ethnically diverse than the population at large. And the brain scans were taken once in their later life. They couldn't tell us what caused what. And Alzheimer's Research UK made the point that the Lancet Commission, the most rigorous ongoing review of what actually modifies risk of dementia, did not currently list sugar as an independent risk factor. And that's pretty significant. So what does this mean for you? Practically? Well, first, a definition, because that does matter. They generally mean free and added sugars, so table sugar, syrups, fruit juice, sweets, sweetened baby snacks, puddings. They don't mean the lactose in your breast milk or the lactose in your formula. They don't mean the sugars inside an apple, the fructose in a sweet potato. If you're feeding a baby milk, you're not giving them sugar in the sense that this research is talking about. And I want to say that clearly because I know that those headlines can get twisted pretty easily. And secondly, and this is the thing that has almost no coverage, the UK guidance already says all of this. The NHS position is that children under 2 do not need added sugar in their diet. The World Health Organization says that added sugars and sweeteners should not be in commercial food for young children. So this research doesn't hand you any new rules. It offers you as a possible reason as to why an existing rule might matter than we always thought, one that plays out over 70 years rather than 70 days. And thirdly, the thing being studied here is a dietary environment over roughly 1,000 days. It's the difference between a childhood where sweet things are everywhere and one where they're very occasional. It's not one birthday cake, it's not one biscuit at your grand's. Nothing in this data says that one single food does anything at all. And if any headline this week made you feel like you've already ruined something or ruined your children, you haven't. Practically, if you want to act on this, the highest yield things are boring and cheap. Swapping out juice, sweetened drinks are the biggest source of free sugars in this age group, so water and milk should be the defaults for young children. Check labels on baby food and toddler snacks, which are often sweeter than what most people expect. Offer sweetness through fruit instead of packaged things. What I find interesting about this research is that it isn't just about the dementia number alone. It's the idea underneath it that the first 1,000 days aren't just growth in the moment, but about a metabolic setting that may hold for decades. We already suspected that about heart health, and it's the same argument being made about the brain. Is it proven? No, it's very hard to prove. It is an association over an observational study that does have real limitations, and the researchers are clear about that. Is it worth knowing? Absolutely, because it lines up so neatly with the advice that we are already given by the NHS, and because of the effort that's required to act on it is genuinely small. Instead of giving them a Capri Sun, we give them water. It can be as simple as that. If you found this useful, please do comment, subscribe and like. It helps to push these videos to other parents that might need to know information that parents need to hear. I would really appreciate it if you do engage. And until the next time, take care of yourself and I'll see you for another video. See you later.